Jaya Raya Madhava Kunjavyari Vijanavalava Girivaradari Jaya Gopijanavalava Girivaradari Yashodanandana Prajajanarandana Yashodanandana Prajajanarandana Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Oh, Premanandi Haribo. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Bonjour. Today we'll read from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 85, Text 40. 54 is on the board. Okay, so we'll read text 54, 55, and 56. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So 54 is on the board. Okay. So first we'll do the word for word. Apayayat. We'll do just each word at a time. Sthanam, Prita, Sutta, Sparsha, Parishnutam Mohita Mayaya Vishnu Yaya Shrishti Pravartate Payayatstanam Prita Sutasparsha Parishnutam Mohita Mayaya Vishnu Yaya Shrishti Pravartate Apayayatstanam Prita Sutasparsha Parishnutam Mohita Mayaya Vishnu Yaya Shrishti Pravartate Payayatstanam Prita Sutasparsha Parishnutam Mohita Mayaya Vishnu Yashashti Pravartate. Apayayat, she let them drink. Sthanam, from her breast. Prita, lovingly. Sutta, of her sons. Sparsha, because of the touch. Parishnutam, drenched. Mohita, bewildered. Mayaya, of the illusory energy. Vishnu, Lord Vishnu. Yaya, by which Shrishti, creation, Pravartate, comes into being. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Yes, A.C. The disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translating, lovingly she let her sons drink from her breast, which became wet with milk just by their touch. She was entranced by the same illusory energy of Lord Vishnu that initiates the creation of the universe. Purport. In the opinion of Srila Jiva Goswami, the word Shrishti can here also refer to the creative process by which Lord Vishnu's Yogamaya arranges the settings and situations of his pastimes. There is indeed no question of Mother Devaki being affected by the material aspect of Maya. Text 55 to 56. Vamritam payastasya pitashesham gatabrita Narayanagasam sparsha pratilabdhatmadharshana Te namaskritya govindam devakim pitaram balam Mishatam sarvabhutanam yayurthama divokasam. Translation: by drinking her nectarian milk, the remnants of what Krishna himself had previously drunk, the six sons touched the transcendental body of the Lord, Narayan, and this contact awakened them to their original identities. They bowed down to Govinda, Devaki, their father, and Balaram. And then, as everyone looked on, they left for the abode of the demigods. Purport: Lord Krishna remained as an infant with Devaki and Vasudeva for only a very short time. First, the Lord appeared before them in his four-armed Vishnu form, and after hearing their prayers, he changed himself into an apparently ordinary infant for their pleasure. But to save Krishna from suffering his brother's fate, Vasudeva at once removed him from Kamsa's prison. Just before Vasudeva took him away, Mother Devaki suckled Krishna once so that he would not feel thirsty during their long trip to Nandavraj. This we learn from the commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnanandana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadhamayam Dadati Swapatantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatanvitam Tam Sajivam Saadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandha Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we'll read this text on the board one more time. Apaya yatstanam purita sutasparsha parishnutam mohita maya vishnur yashishti pravartate. Lovingly, at least she let her sons drink from her breast, which became wet with milk just by their touch. She was entranced by the same illusory energy of Lord Vishnu that initiates the creation of the universe. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshtari. So yes, the illusory energy of the Lord, how powerful this Maya Shakti. Mama Maya Duratyaya, you cannot cross over. It's impenetrable. Sorry. Because you're just a small jiva. So how can the jiva overcome the Maya Shakti? Maya is a pure devotee. You can't. As long as we think we can, then we're limited. But some of my realizations have been that no, actually, the more we can admit that, admit our smallness and our insignificance, then Krishna can do that. We can't do it, you can't do it, but Krishna can easily do that. For him, that's nothing. So this dependent mood, trying to bring our mind back to Krishna. Manmana bhava madbhakto. Always remember me, always think of me. But somehow or other throughout the day, we find it very difficult, I think, to really think about Krishna, isn't it? Therefore we have some sadhana in the morning to try to really absorb ourselves in Krishna for a few hours. Because as soon as the day gets rolling, good luck. So therefore that time we have to try to go very deep, and every day should be like festival. Like festival days, we get a lot of mercy. We're like, wow. We need that to try to do that every day, so we have some depth that we can draw on throughout the day, throughout the hard times, the difficult times, the tests. When we get tested. And what are we getting tested? Usually just our attachments. They're getting pulled right in front of our eyes. Ooh, and it hurts. It can be a very small thing. It could be a very big thing. But even the small things can very easily throw us off. We're always trying to hit that reset button and get realigned. For that, the Maha Mantra is the supreme aligning factor. It resets our consciousness, but we have to chant it in the right mood, not in the mood of just some ritual or some sound, but to hear the holy name of Krishna, because Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastimes, they are all absolute. What does it mean? It means they're all non-different. It means that the holy name manifests all of these things. In the higher levels of chanting, as soon as one hears the name or chants the name, the form, the qualities, and the pastimes are all there. That's what Prabhupada means, absolute. So the whole spiritual world is there. But we want to try to hear the holy name, and that depends a lot on our hearing of Krishna's activities. If we don't hear what Krishna does, or what he looks like, or his qualities, then that holy name, that gem, that Chintamani gem, it's just maybe some noise for us. Some people, they hear the chanting like, what is that noise? Turn it down. Can you guys be a little quieter? They think it's just a noise. No, it's not a noise, it's a reality. It's a transcendental reality. But it should be ideally chanted in the offenseless or pure manner to manifest the full potency. And that's what's really powerful. That's really Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. It's the spreading of the pure holy name, not just the semblance. Like when we're doing kirtan, if we're not really deep in the kirtan, then that may not have the power to fully awaken the soul. But when the great souls chant, it's coming from a very deep place in the heart. That Vedic sound, it manifests from the sky of the heart. So Krishna uses sound to purify. Sound is the main element for purifying us. So we need more spiritual sound, less material sound. So here we're hearing about this powerful illusory energy of the Lord, which is bewildering all living entities in this universe, from the little minute insects, the ants, the germs, up to the greatest Lord Indra, the king of the demigods. We understand Maya is influencing all. This is her kingdom. And how does she do it? It's called the false ego. It makes us think, yes, I'm a product of matter. It's the greatest illusion for the conditioned soul. That's what we call the outer world. There's the inner world, which is reality. There's the external outer world, which is the world of appearance. It seems, but it's not. Just like our body, we're so identified with it. Every time we look in the mirror, we think that's me. That is not us. So like a dream, then Krishna gives us the free will. Okay, you can go in your dream world, you can do what you like, try to find happiness there, because Krishna never forces. Krishna never forces. He only gives loving opportunity to come back to him. So then it's explained beautifully by King Muchukunda that when the wandering of the living entity ceases, then he gets the association of the great souls, the Mahatmas. So this we were hearing is a beautiful poetic description of an ornament, a literary ornament, which is that it seems that when the end comes, then you get the association of sadhus, but actually it's the sadhus that bring about the end of one's entanglement. I wanted to just bring up one very beautiful section of Bhagavatam, which is so amazing. A favorite passage. But these prayers also of Muchukunda are very beautiful. We could look at those as well. Because they have that vision. The enlightened devotees, they have the vision of the power of this illusory energy and how it influences us, keeps us bound up here. We're misdirecting our energy. We should be engaging our energy in the spiritual world with Krishna, playing with Krishna, and serving Radharani, and the cowherd boys, or the residents of Vrindavan. That's what we should be doing. But we're running around here, playing on these playgrounds, where, if you don't look carefully where you walk, you might step on something which could give you a terrible reaction, isn't it? That's the playgrounds here. There's all sorts of terrible things in this material world that can, end this lifetime. But the great souls have this vision, and I'm thinking of Markandeya Rishi, because he actually saw the illusory potency of the Lord. And it's such a beautiful story that he just had a desire. I know you have this very powerful illusory energy, I just want to see it. Krishna said, okay, if that's what you want, no problem. So he started meditating. He's meditating every day in this hermitage. Krishna said, you want to see my illusory energy? Okay, no problem. So then he goes back, he starts meditating, and suddenly it starts raining. I think many of us remember this pastime. Let me see if I can find the beginning of it. Okay. O Brahmana Shonaka, best of the Brigus, one day while Markandeya was performing his evening worship on the bank of the Pushpa Bhadra, a great wind suddenly arose. That wind created a terrible sound and brought in its wake fearsome clouds that were accompanied by lightning and roaring thunder, and that poured down on all sides torrents of rain as heavy as wagon wheels. Then the four great oceans appeared on all sides, swallowing up the surface of the earth with their wind-tossed waves. In these oceans were terrible sea monsters, fearful whirlpools, and ominous rumblings. The sage saw all the inhabitants of the universe, including himself, tormented within and without by the harsh winds, the bolts of lightning, and the great waves rising beyond the sky. As the whole earth flooded, he grew perplexed and fearful. Even as Markandeya looked on, the rain pouring down from the clouds filled the ocean more and more, until the great sea, its waters violently whipped into terrifying waves by hurricanes, covered up all the earth's islands, mountains, and continents. The water inundated the earth, outer space, heaven, and the celestial region. Only Markandeya remained. His matted hair scattered, the great sage wandered alone in the water, as if dumb and blind. Tormented by hunger and thirst, attacked by monstrous makaras and tamingal of fish, and battered by the wind and waves, he moved aimlessly through the infinite darkness into which he had fallen. As he grew increasingly exhausted, he lost all sense of direction and could not tell the sky from the earth. Countless millions of years passed as Markandeya wandered about in that deluge, his mind bewildered by the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is, we could say, it's a similar state that when we're covered, we go through millions of lifetimes in this material universe, being tossed around. He's being tossed in the ocean, we're being tossed on the land. Some calamities, some hurricanes, so many different lives. So many crazy things have happened in all of our previous lives, but how many of them do we remember? So guess what? This life also, we may not remember very much, but we're taking it very, very seriously. Everything that's going on in the world out there, politics, countries, territories, nations, just the waves. So when we have that knowledge, then we can focus. We need to just focus. And that focus ultimately is that I'm done. I'm done. No more. I had enough. I don't want to float around anymore. It's not going to work out. Then we can, that's kind of when then we could say the spiritual life can really begin, because otherwise we still have so many attachments. And that's like someone wants to give you some gold, but you're holding on to some iron very tightly. They wanted to give you that best thing, but we were attached to something here. It's very subtle. It's very subtle. It's in our mind. This, we can say, maybe is why we're not progressing, because we're still attached here. Who's ready to go back to God? Who's ready to leave this material world? Prabhupada said that Krishna wants us back more than we want to go. Do we want to go? Who's ready to go? If we don't want to go, we're not going to go. Krishna's not going to take us somewhere we don't want to go. We'd rather stay around here, do some more things, build some more mansions or small caves, whichever one, attracts us. But what happened? Once, while wandering in the water, the Brahmin Markandeya discovered a small island upon which stood a young banyan tree, bearing blossoms and fruits. Upon a branch of the northeast portion of that tree, he saw an infant boy lying within a leaf. The child's effulgence was swallowing up the darkness. The infant's dark blue complexion was the color of a flawless emerald. His lotus face shone with a wealth of beauty, and his throat bore marks like the lines of a conch shell. He had a broad chest, finely shaped nose, beautiful eyebrows, and lovely ears that resembled pomegranate flowers, and that had inner folds like a conch shell spirals. The corners of his eyes were reddish like the whorl of a lotus, and the effulgence of his coral-like lips slightly reddened the nectarian, enchanting smile on his face. As he breathed, his splendid hair trembled, and his deep navel became distorted by the moving folds of skin on his abdomen, which resembled a banyan leaf. The exalted Brahmin watched with amazement as the infant took hold of one of his lotus feet with his graceful fingers, placed a toe within his mouth, and began to suck. As Markandeya beheld the child, all his weariness vanished. Indeed, so great was his pleasure that the lotus of his heart, along with his lotus eyes fully blossomed, and the hairs on his body stood on end. Confused as to the identity of the wonderful infant, the sage approached him. So similarly, then one day we get this banyan leaf, We could say that's like a type of leaf, like a parchment, and that's like a book. Maybe that's like a book that we were struggling in this ocean of destruction, and then we saw this banyan leaf. We got that transcendental book which what was inside Krishna, beautiful Krishna, doing his lila, sucking his toe, or doing his transcendental activities. And then what happened? All our weariness vanished. When we came to Krishna consciousness, all our weariness vanished. Oh, yes, this is it. Finally found this beautiful transcendental reality. And he was so amazed, he was full of pleasure, that his hairs on his body stood on end. In the beginning, often Krishna gives some very special mercy, where we feel some extraordinary emotions, and then Krishna makes you work for it. He gives you that little taste, but then you're going to have to do some work to get to the real standard or the real experience. So then, just then the child inhaled, drawing Markandeya within his body like a mosquito. There the sage found the entire universe arrayed as it had been before its dissolution. Seeing this, Markandeya was most astonished and perplexed. So then he finds himself actually back in his hermitage, and he's sitting meditating, and it's like that never happened. Isn't that amazing? So it's like his whole sojourn for millions of years in the ocean of dissolution never happened. So it's explained like that in the spiritual world. When we go back to the spiritual world, it's like this material existence never, it's like it never happened. So how powerful is the soul? It's transcendental, it's eternal. No matter what happens in this material world, it's untouched, uncut, unaffected by anything. How powerful is that soul that can survive anything of this material world? And how beautiful is its reality, that it is completely aloof. Hyayam Purusha, the soul is never in contact with this material energy. So we're never actually in contact with this material energy. And then at this point, everything was wound up, everything got absorbed back into the body of Krishna. So similarly, this whole material universe will get reabsorbed into the body of the Lord. And it was mentioned here that this yoga maya, this maya of the Lord initiates the creation. So that could be the shrishti of this material world, which is affected by Durga, or it could be the spiritual yoga maya, which is the Lord's internal energy. So I think we should clarify, last time we were talking about Devaki, how she became bewildered. But here we understand, and to clarify, this is the yoga maya, because she's a pure devotee. So she's not under the influence of Mahamaya, or the external maya. But these are some pastimes. It said there's no question of Mother Devaki being affected by the material aspect of Maya. She was entranced by the same illusory energy that initiates the creation of the universe. So Jiva Goswami says this Shrishti can also refer to the creative process by which Yoga Maya arranges the settings and situations of his pastimes. So the original, where does Maya come from? It comes from Yoga Maya. It comes from the Lord's pleasure energy, by which all his pastimes in the spiritual world are conducted. Krishna doesn't have to worry about orchestrating the pastimes. He's just in them. He's the enjoyer. It's like someone has a party, the birthday person, they don't make all the arrangements. It's usually someone else, they want to throw some party for someone, so they make all the arrangements. So the birthday person can just experience what's going on. So similarly, Krishna doesn't have to worry about these things. It's arranged by Yoga Maya, and she does it so expertly, just according to his pleasure, to try to please him. And so many wonderful pastimes that she orchestrates. So Devaki was not affected, and these her previous sons, which had been killed, they came back from the abode of Varuna, and just by taking that Mahaprasad, they they contacted the transcendental body of the Lord. So also the power of the prasad. Just by taking that prasad, it enlivens us out of this dreamlike slumber. It awakens the soul. Prabhupada said these simple things, taking prasad and chanting the holy name, it's a medicine for us, for our disease of material attachment. Can free us from that. And then these sons, they bowed down, they left for their own abode. They awakened to their original identities. And then they go back to the demigods. And after all this, Mother Devaki she's struck with wonder, and she concludes this was all just an illusion created by you. So that's also what's, as we mentioned, going on here. It seems so real. We have to keep always in mind that detachment. Otherwise, we'll get ensnared, get entangled, if we forget the transcendental reality, if we forget the sambandha gyan of this material world. And that allows us to be tolerant and detached from those things that throw us off. As we said, our morning sadhana is meant to prepare us for whatever comes in the day, but we need that detachment also, because we can only really tolerate things when we're detached. It's very liberating for the soul to have some experience of the temporary nature of this material universe, and therefore the detachment from it, because things are just not that big a deal in the bigger picture. We don't have to get bent up about it. Better we always just try to take the most humble route that we can. Then all of those things will pass over us. But we try to get absorbed in them, we try to correct them, we try to put things in place, then we just are investing ourselves more often into something temporary or illusory. So this is a very powerful knowledge, and we have the obligation, we have the duty and the privilege to share it with others, to help others also come out of the slumber, or this great ocean that Markandeya found himself in, Markandeya Rishi found himself in. And this is the power of transcendental objects like Mahaprasad, Charanamrita. It's explained there's three very potent, the most potent substances. The remnants of the pure devotee, the water which washes their feet, and the dust from their feet. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said these have very special power to cure us of our material disease. So I'm then going to stop here. It's a little bit distracting with all the work going on there, but we see if anyone has any question or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for the class. I know you're saying, I think I understand, about trying to figure things out, but some things we have to try to figure out to a certain degree, right? That's
Totally, definitely, yes. We have to do our part. But we should try to err on the side of just taking the humble route in any type of conflict situation. Better we take the lower road. That's the actual higher road. Better than being right is to be able to remember Krishna, to be able to chant. Kirtaniya Sadahari. The goal is that in any situation, our chanting is undisturbed. We're able to chant in a good state of consciousness. That's what's most important. It's not about who's right or who's going to win or who's in a better position or even what's uncomfortable. We want to preserve our consciousness. That's the most important.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for the
Thanks a lot,
class
Prabhu.
and for being here. In your experience, have you seen, or do you think there are, or have you, do you see any similarities between becoming a devotee of Krishna and like a Buddhism? A lot of times we meet in our preaching, we'll meet like a Buddhist. A person says, "I'm a Buddhist," and they have so many great qualities, in Buddhism. So I was wondering if you have any thoughts about the differences and similarities or anything about Buddhism and Vaishnavism, like the devotee and the Buddhist.
Just give me a minute to think because I was just thinking about something related to Buddhism. I'll try to remember if it comes back. I can't remember what it was. Um, the difference between Buddhism and Krishna consciousness. You'd like to know the similarities?
We'll come across, like in preaching, a person that's a Buddhist, or we may see some lectures by like a Shaolin monks, and they have so many great positive qualities. Or Buddhists. I was wondering if you have any thoughts about it.
Oh, okay, now I remember. Yeah, Buddhism, I mean, my experience is a very beautiful tradition. Uh, when I was in college, I was studying Buddhism, and for certain situations, certain contexts, it's uh, it's extremely beautiful because it allows people who do not have theistic conception to accept an ultimate goal, an ultimate state of consciousness. So it's amazing. I mean, in one sense, it's very brilliant because Prabhupada says what Buddha did was he tricked people who were either atheist or they don't have enough sukriti to worship God. It's amazing how Buddhism brings people who are not interested in any religion. I don't like religion, but I'm a Buddhist. I like Buddhism. That's Krishna doing that. Krishna said, okay, you don't want any of that stuff? Here, take this one. But it's still my path. It's still me. Whatever mama nuvartante nusha partasarvasha, whatever path you walk, it leads to me, right? Isn't that Krishna says? So the Buddhist path is an amazing, beautifully brilliant path to help people who are not interested at all in religion to worship God because they start worshiping Buddha. So if Buddha said, I'm God, no one would but in a camouflaged way. And by teaching true principles like karma and reincarnation, then they are gradually elevated. And that's Krishna's mission in this world. That's why all these different avatars and religions come, because Krishna is compassion. He wants to help all beings, not only certain beings, not only Brahmins in India, all over the world, all humans, all spirit souls. Krishna sends gurus, acharyas, saints to help. So we see in this circumstance to help certain people. Krishna appeared, manifests Buddha. And yes, there are many beautiful aspects of the tradition. Uh, Discipline, detachment, like we've been talking about. They're very detached. Some may live in monasteries up in Tibet or Bhutan. And that type of detachment from the material world attracts a lot of people. Even we're not able to do it, but so many people get inspired a little bit in their spiritual life just by seeing that wow, these people live aloof from everything. They're just focused. So it inspires us a lot. And I think probably all of us got inspired by that Buddhist path to come to this path. They do a lot of meditation. They a lot of similarities in the philosophy, reincarnation. Even the many of the Buddhist scriptures have a lot of Hindu influence, Vedic influence, samsara, principles of karma. I recently saw one documentary, a little bit about one aspect of Buddhism. So they have monks, they go out begging. So many things very similar to Vedic culture. And it's natural because Buddha emerged from Vedic culture, but he has particular mission. So I found it in my life quite purifying in the beginning to be exposed to Buddhism and principles of some of Buddha's teachings. It's amazing how the story goes that he was living in this palace where they thought everything is perfect. Don't let him go outside because outside there's disease and death. We don't want him to see that. And as soon as he goes outside, he sees that. Imagine the first time you see someone old. It's so amazing. You realize, hey, something's wrong here. We're so used to it that it never strikes us. The first time he saw it, he said, what is wrong? These people are suffering. He'd never seen that before. So it's a wake-up call. So I think it can help a lot of people. All that being said, there are some very big differences also, which make us quite distant from Buddhism. And we don't even put Buddha on our altar because, I mean, on one hand, there's many forms of Buddhism. It's often difficult to ascertain which Buddha taught which teaching. But there are many strong differences which keep Vaishnavas at a distance also from Buddhism, because ultimately most of the Buddhist philosophies are, they don't accept, they don't understand God, they don't attribute God in their philosophy. So you have this repeated birth and death, and so God and the soul, they don't even really accept the soul. It's just depends on which Buddhism people are into. But so unfortunately, because of these this lack of understanding of the Atma and the Paramatma, it does not appeal to many very theistic people, because but that aspect is not often brought out. It's more or less the Vaishnavas who understand these more subtleties about it. So it's very valuable, it's very useful, but Krishna does these to help certain people at certain times. And that's his mission. So it's definitely helping a lot of people. I just met with my a family member who's Buddhist, and there's so many things we have in common that we can talk about. It becomes a very good step for them to learn more about Vaishnava. They're very open because they follow similar things, and they like going to temples, and they have interest in a lot of our philosophy. So it makes for very exciting exchange. Buddhism, yeah, it's very mystical, It's very attractive for people to get a little more in their spiritual life and meditate. And I don't know probably as much as I should about it. I mean, I've read some of the canons. They have different sutras and things like that. I studied in college. So that's a little about Buddhism. I mean, there's different Buddhas mentioned in the Bhagavatam. We hear about Buddha who rides on an airplane. He rides on a vimana. And this is Krishna's method to yada yada hi dharmasya, again and again, reestablish religion. And also Prabhupada emphasized a lot his purpose to end animal sacrifice of non-violence. This to me is the main aspect that Prabhupada talks about Buddhism. So that is, in Kali Yuga, the certain sacrifices are forbidden. The horse, the cow sacrifice, they're not, in Kali Yuga they're not sanctioned. So if someone is a Buddhist, then ideally they're non-violent. Ideally they're vegetarian. Unfortunately, many are not, because one of their principles, especially in Tibetan Buddhism, is that the overriding principle of what you eat is that you should accept what the guest gives you. So if the guest gives you some kind of meat, it's not their etiquette to refuse that. So, I mean, obviously vegetarians and people who are very much into respect for animals don't appreciate that so much, but it's one of their principles. They would go out begging, literally. So there are certain occasions, like if there's nothing else to eat, there's certain occasions where it's permissible. But how strict they are to that is not very clear. It doesn't seem very clear, it seems. All of this is coming from this beautiful land of Bharatvarsha. So to be able to visit India, to be able to become more and more familiar with that culture, it really helps us in Krishna consciousness. Because India, the land of India, is more or less the remnants of this Vedic culture where it was very prominent. So it's a very healthy exposure for us Westerners because we have taken birth in this very distant land and we're very familiar with this culture. But Bharat is really where our tradition comes from. It's like going to our motherland, basically. And it's really helpful to also learn many cultural things. Often Westerners, we have very difficult times with certain cultural aspects of Krishna consciousness, which are much more familiar for those of India in so many different ways. Anyway, there's many aspects. Sorry if I went off a little tangent there. Thanks, Prabhu. Anything else?
I was reflecting a little on the description of Markandeya Rishi and that he actually lost his sense of direction being in the illusory energy. So the reflection went down the path of making a connection with what you had stated, that somebody may just receive a book, and within that book is Krishna, his pastime, or the holy name. So it's so profound, this idea that actually one gets a sense of direction by that contact with exposure to Krishna's pastimes and his holy name. So I was just thinking how profound it is, connecting what you had spoken about this morning.
Yes, unfortunately, in the lower modes of nature, what is positive or dharmic seems adharmic. Just like Christian people, they think Hinduism is something bad often. Now that's something weird. Even yoga, they really think many think yoga is something evil. Isn't that crazy? Why? Because the lower modes of nature, the sinful reactions, they don't permit clear conception of what's what. The consciousness is covered by reaction of sin, then what seems right to them is actually incorrect. And what's incorrect, what's actually correct, it seems incorrect to them. And what they practice is actually incorrect. So the modes of nature are responsible. They bewilder the living entity. They bewilder the consciousness. Why is one person, bewildered in their mind? It's because of the different influence of the modes. When one comes to sattva gun, then the consciousness is clear, and one can ascertain what is true dharma. So we want to help bring people to a higher mode of nature by which they can understand the science of God. Because you cannot understand the science of God as long as you're under a lower mode of nature. So we try to directly introduce the Bhagavad Dharma, which includes principles of how to live your life in a way where you can rise to a higher state of consciousness. And it's true for devotees also. We cannot rise to the transcendental platform if we're still under lower modes. We still are engaging in activities or words or behaviors which are under lower modes of nature. Like things are very messy. You cannot chant very well. Cleanliness is a principle of sattva gun. It does something to the mind. Especially trying to go deep in meditation. Prabhupada would say cleanliness is godliness. Have you ever had the experience where it's hard to remember Krishna in a dirty place? Anyone had this? It's amazing. I went to one hotel. I was in India, in a certain city, and I had to find some place to stay. And I was most places were all booked. This was a big yatra, and the place I found, it was so dirty that I felt it was almost like subhuman. It was like everything was just like they never cleaned it or something. And I just sat there and I was covering things with cloth to try to make it so I took my japa because I had some rounds to chant. I could not chant one name in that place. Krishna was not reciprocating. I could not access him just because that place was dirty. So we also need to try to live in this state of sattva gun as devotees, as practicing devotees, so that when we're chanting or meditating or remembering, there's clarity. There's not static. And often the ways we interact with others, all the modes affect so many things. The time, the place. So we also can take a lesson of the importance of developing qualities in the mode of goodness to facilitate our Krishna consciousness and the full potential of our consciousness. Like our actions, they can also be in the modes of nature. We can act in certain ways, Yeah, everything. Okay, yes, it's 8:30, so we stop here. Thank you all so very much. It's such a pleasure to be back and visit this sacred dham, where even Surya Dev, the sun, wants to shine on Krishna's face. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Gaur Prem.